The shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, the first defeat of the invincible Rommel, tactics and strategy, taking a look at the new map for Naval Battles, and Metal Beasts, a Japanese tank destroyer with a huge howitzer. In this episode, we continue talking about the new machines from Update 1.91. This time, we're looking at the Japanese self-propelled howitzer at BR 7.0. It possesses some decent firepower and is quite agile, but also has some unique Oriental touches. The main weapon of the Type 75 is the 155mm howitzer equipped with an autoloader. It depresses to 5 degrees and elevates to 65 degrees. Additional armaments include an AA Browning on the roof. The transmission and the engine are located in the frontal part of the hull, next to the driver, while the rest of the crew members sit with the ammo in a rotating turret mounted on the rear part of the machine. This tank destroyer has aluminium armor that can only protect it from low-caliber machine guns. Any autocannon shot will already be quite dangerous. On the other hand, this armor is what makes this machine quite hardy against the more serious opponents. In most cases, the fuses of their big explosive rounds won't even notice an armor this thin. They will just fly straight through the whole thing without causing serious damage. But the main advantage of the Type 75 is, of course, the quite original and powerful weapon. The drum autoloader speeds the reload up to 10 seconds, which is almost as fast as the rapid-firing weapons of MBTs. Moreover, you can choose an HE round with a variable time fuse that can detonate not only after a direct hit, but also when it's simply flying past the target. You can use it to get your frag, even if the enemy's hiding behind some obstacle, and you can't see him directly. Another valuable asset is your agility. This machine is powered by a Mitsubishi engine, giving almost 1,500 horsepower, so it easily speeds up to 40 kph even off-road. This means you can quickly flank the opponent if your plan goes sideways. Your retreat can also be quite rapid. As for disadvantages, the Type 75 is a howitzer, so your ballistics aren't very comfortable, especially at large distances. Also, none of the 4 types of rounds at your disposal have a decent piercing rate. You'll have to aim at the roofs or under the bottoms of most of your opponents, except for the light-armored tech. Finally, this gun isn't just badly stabilized. You swing so badly that your enemies will almost always have to have the first shot. So, the Type 75 is one that's effective at medium distances where sharpshooting isn't very troublesome yet. Then, this Japanese machine has more chances to fire first and win any quick fight. Rommel. This single name could cause a chill running down the spines of British soldiers and officers in the autumn of 1941. Rommel's Afrika Korps seemed to be invincible. They'd already destroyed everything that the Allies had achieved in Libya. His troops reached the borders of Egypt. They were one step away from entering Cairo and seizing the Suez Canal. Tobruk was cut off, being under siege. Think about it. Commander-in-Chief of the Middle East Theater, Sir Claude Auchinleck, had to actually issue an order forbidding the pronouncing of Rommel's name, so that his troops stopped considering him to be superhuman. Well, that must have worked, mustn't it? But the Desert Fox himself wasn't happy during those days. The communications between his army were unstable and stretched to the extreme. Supplies were coming late and irregularly. The damned Eastern Front was taking more and more, as it became the main direction of the Reich's military campaign. It was impossible to attack further under those conditions. He could only think about trying to keep what he'd already got. He couldn't even storm Tobruk, though he desperately needed its port. The stand on the border between Libya and Egypt took almost half a year. Rommel could not attack, and the Allies could not dare to. Churchill was furious at his doubting generals and finally got them to do something. On November 18, 1941, the 8th British Army pushed forward. The Allies had almost twice as many tanks, more than half as many soldiers, and a lot more aviation equipment than the Germans. But what they did not have was experience on any level, from privates to staff sergeants to senior officers. British generals still thought in terms of World War I. They couldn't really plan an operation this big. In the end, they decided to divide their tank forces into two parts. One should attack the enemy in the front, along the coastline, while the other, outfitted with the newest Crusader tanks, was about to outflank the enemy through the desert. According to the plan, they would wind up in the Germans' rear, unite with the forces of the station sieged in Tobruk, and cut the Axis forces from their supply lines. After that, the British command thought Rommel would only have one option: to surrender. As for the heavy Matilda tanks, their task was cooperating with the infantry troops. Great plan, right? But while the newest Crusaders were going round in the desert, Rommel had already managed to stop the Grants and the Stuarts, and made their accompanying troops look for cover. The British were so reckless in their offensive actions that they had managed to take losses even from the 123rd Italian Ariete Tank Division, the one that they'd been laughing about for some days before that. So, when the Crusaders of the 30th Tank Corps tried to unleash mayhem on Rommel's forces from the desert, they found out that he'd already been waiting for them. German and British tanks, as well as lots of infantry and artillery forces, met in a huge battle. The air was also crowded with planes fighting each other. But this fight wasn't about the speed or armor or guns. It was about quick thinking and adequate reactions to the ever-changing situation. And this is where the British command wasn't anywhere close to the Desert Fox. As early as on the 21st of November, his tanks stopped the offensive British forces, localized them, and went on the offense themselves. Not for long, though. They desperately lacked fuel. For the same reason, the united forces of the Luftwaffe and Regia Aeronautica weren't very active in the sky either. The British gradually got the lead in the air. The most awful day for the Goering pilots was the 5th of December, when the 112th RAF Squadron demolished a regiment of the German Junkers 87 bombers. The commander of that squadron, Clive Robertson Caldwell, grounded 5 of them himself, which made him a part of a very close circle of those who became an air ace in one day. Everything that Rommel was left to do was lift the siege from Tobruk and commence the long retreat to the west. This wasn't a victory, though. They just made the Germans take a step back. British, Australian, New Zealander, South African and Indian casualties counted more than 17,000. More than half of their tanks were lying in the hot African deserts burning. Still, they managed to achieve the main goal, because now they knew Rommel could be defeated. He was talented and sly, but he wasn't a superhuman or a clairvoyant. The main battle against him, way more horrible, was still ahead, and somewhere very far in the east, under the walls of Moscow, tanks of Guderian were also burning and turning back. The Blitzkrieg was turning into the prolonged war. The Japanese port map for naval domination mode was added in the game with Update 1.91. The location's design is inspired by the landscapes of the city of Yokohama, which is not that far from Tokyo. In the upper left corner of the map, we can see the famous Mount Fuji dominating over the entire map. The two peninsulas that form a bay in the northern part of the map also have real-life prototypes, Izu on the left and Bozo on the right. In terms of gameplay, we have 3 zones here. First is the aforementioned bay in the north of the map. Here, we'll be seeing a lot of battles between the lightest ships, also known as Mosquito Fleet. You can spawn here on various small boats as well as on a couple of bigger ones. Spawn points are separated by a pier wedged into the harbor. There are also 5 islands in this bay, 3 of which are located around the capture point, while the other 2 additionally protect this region from destroyers. Sure, the islands only get a couple of meters up, but it's more than enough to cover most of the small boats. And if your ship has some high constructions on the deck, you can hide behind the outlines of various buildings. Finally, right in the center of Point C, there's a huge cargo ship, and its high boards can also protect you from enemy fire. There are no other cover opportunities in this area, so if you want to capture the point safely, you'll need to be quick, careful, cooperative, and use your smokes wisely. The second area is located a couple of kilometers away from the shore. It's half-opened, and here we can see the battles between destroyers. Spawn points for smaller ships are divided by 2 strings of islands. There are 6 of them, and each has lots of hills to cover you. The tiniest island is actually located right near the B capture point. In the center of the map, there are positions from where you can support your smaller comrades in the bay and fire all over the C point. On the other hand, this very center of the map is a kill zone from the perspective of those who fight in the southern part of the map. Artillery duels here take place at a distance of about 4 to 6 kilometers, so it's imperative that you force your opponent out of action before he inflicts any significant damage. Also, keep in mind that faster boats might just be bold enough to simply go and capture Point B and attack the enemy destroyers with torpedoes. The third area is in the open water, and here the destroyers fight not just each other, but also the opposing cruisers. This is where the largest ships appear, and there's also another pair of spawn point for lesser ships. The sides are divided by a huge rocky island in the southern part of the map. The actual combat begins when you and your opponent find yourself less than 10 kilometers away from each other. The A point is located right before the second zone ends, and it's open to all winds. The destroyer can reach it from the center of the map, so think twice before spawning in the south. The cruisers, on their part, should focus on destroying their counterparts from the other team, guarding and capturing Point A and supporting their allies trying to capture Point B. As for the aviation, this map is quite hard for any pilot, as there aren't many covers that can protect you from enemy AA weapons. Overall, Japanese port is quite a small map, given that it's a naval one. Your best friends here are quick pacing and good aiming skills. Now, regarding your comments. The first question today is sent by a player called II Synopsis. Teach us how to aim anti-air, especially heavier single-firing guns like the 40mm Bofors. Hi there. First, try them in arcade mode, where you have the deflection marker. Switch to RB only when you're sure that you can feel the right deflection on your own. Also, keep in mind that this marker doesn't account for acceleration. It only gives you the right point when your target moves at a straight line under the constant speed. So do keep an eye on your opponent's behavior. If he speeds up, aim a bit in front of the marker. If he slows down, aim behind it. If he's taking a sharp turn, aim to the side of the marker, the one where he's turning to. All of the above concerns all anti-air weapons, but it's especially useful if you use heavy single-firing guns, where every bullet is extremely valuable. Then there's a question sent by Sultan. How long would it take to cool a tank engine if I were to turn it off? 1 minute? 2? 3? Hello there. It would be closer to 4 minutes. It's quite long indeed, so hiding and waiting for your engine to cool down to shoot your enemies out of the blue, it's quite a risky move. Even more so because you can't move at all while you wait, which makes you a very easy target. A user called Zeus Hun asks, what is the difference in the shot you take when your ammo rack explodes or you lose ammo? Hi there. In most tanks, if your ammo rack is damaged, there is one of two outcomes waiting for you. The ammo will either blow up and destroy your crew, or it will just break and become unusable. But there are a few tanks with special blowout panels. They are constructed in such a manner that even if the ammo rack blows up, the explosive blast goes outside the tank, without dealing any severe damage to the modules and the crew. Another question came from Pentatone. I have a couple of vehicles with hydropneumatic suspensions, but I don't really know how and when to use them. The settings you're looking for are quite obviously located in Tank, and then Movement, then Suspension Control. Here, you can set the buttons to incline forwards, backwards, to the left, and to the right, as well as increase and/or decrease clearance and resetting the suspension's position to default. Inclines help you increase and decrease your weapon's elevation angles so that you're able to aim at some points that you couldn't before. Low clearance makes the machine more stable and decreases your swinging. Plus, it makes you more compact and easier to hide behind different covers. And high clearance helps you pass through some really difficult terrains. And the last question for today was written by Cam Mi. Will there ever be a tutorial mission to introduce and teach people how to fly and operate helicopters? Well, thank you for showing your interest. It will definitely be there. We're working on it. Well, folks, that's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment. So, come on, people. Subscribe to the channel and press that bell button. You really have to leave a like because we know you like it. And tell us what you think in the comments below. See you in a week.